Oh, wow. How's life in the big DGG today? Oh, I'm sorry. Are we hate watching right now?
But I think over and over again, she's just going to be able to chime in once, get banned for a week, come back, chime in again with the same exact perspective, knowing full well
in terms of healthcare for the elderly in the world.
You've timed her out for... Think about how much Americans actually love, you know, punishing criminals. And this is a instance where they are not interested in punishing a criminal who did the fucking worst crime you could do. It's just an assassination in broad daylight. Politicians are so unimaginably disconnected from their constituents and their interests. And not only that, but also so is the media. And this is yet another instance where all of these institutions are like trying to present themselves as civility understanders, norm understanders, institution defenders.
And change for a patient's allergy injection. And they had done an audit and said that they weren't going to cover that bill of $12 and change. I am a doctor, and I have no idea why they're able to deny this.
Does anyone else feel like they're having everything denied and need to appeal lately? I mean, I'm talking about joint replacements for a patient with bone-on-bone arthritis needing to get appealed for no reason. Like, what do we do? How can we make this end? I just feel like I'm in this cycle, spending more time dealing with insurance companies than with patients.
Insurance is the largest roadblock to just attaining proper treatment, access to healthcare. And it's just like we're just bleeding money left and right in this healthcare industry. And who is it benefiting? Not benefiting me as a doctor.
The guy's going to get away with the cops seem lost. I mean, ironically enough, a part of the reason why the cops seem lost is because every aspect of American society, including fucking policing, is also crippled by the same profit motive that undermines every institution, because they're using like artificial intelligence and shit. I mean, cops also are just really bad at their jobs in general, and this is yet another instance of them being really bad at their jobs and being bad at their jobs in broad fucking daylight.
What I mean, what are they supposed to do? Bring on the precogs? What?
It's not benefiting the patient. Who is it actually benefiting?
Wow, here to help us understand why so many people are so very angry is CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder. She's editor-at-large for public health at KFF Health News. Really glad to have you here, especially on this particular day. Listen, we can all agree that the system is broken. We all agree on that, but it seems that people are having a hard time separating the broken system for the person. The fact that so many people are gleeful is the word that this has happened to this man just sort of stuns me. How did we get here?
Look, vigilante justice is not okay.
Yeah.
We do have a country of law and order where there are systems to address these issues, which we can talk about more. But look.
But if you don't want, it's simple, okay? If you don't want the Me Too movement to like randomly get out of control and start yelling at like people for having like a bad date or whatever, then the systems can't fail victims of sexual assault, okay? And the same goes for this. If you don't want people to release the pressure that they fucking feel, if you don't want vigilante justice, and I don't want vigilante justice, because there is obviously vigilante justice is uncontrolled. Okay? It turns into some of the most damaging aspects of the Cultural Revolution. You know what I mean? It's decentralized. It's primarily focused on revenge. Okay, and it can be its starting point can be an adequate point of anger, okay, a real point of anger, but it never ends in that situation. It never ends with only the appropriate victims, or I mean the appropriate targets. Okay.
Why is the right so obsessed with alternative nutrition stuff like carnivore diet, raw milk, etc.? I've never understood it. I think there's a lot of big things going on today. I think one thing that we have is I think people just don't realize how good society is right now in the United States. It's so crazy that like the average mood is so low, but our standards of living have never been higher. Like we literally, like maybe it's always been like this, but we've like we found assuming no major side effects are found, like Ozempic might literally be the vaccination equivalent of like the 21st century, or pick some other medicine since half you fucking retards don't believe in vaccines anymore. Like we have discovered so much and making progress in so many areas, and the standards of living are so high in the West, but it just feels everybody feels so like everything is falling apart, is horrible. It's like, what's happening right now? we destroyed, we demolished every other country when it came to surviving and coming out of COVID, when it came to managing inflation compared to other places. Like Americans just have no concept of what the rest of the world is like. And it's so funny when you go to international forums. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased towards the industry area that I work in, but like listening to tech people who live and work in the United Kingdom, whoo, it's like not even remotely close. Like the United States is doing so well, so many different ways. But like everybody's being fed this idea that everybody is fucked and everything is being destroyed and everything is falling apart and everything is horrible and everything is, it's like, no, chill, not generally. We're doing fine. Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
So if you don't want vigilante justice, you have to fix the problems. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of these institutions are so woefully incompetent and are so used to not fixing these issues that it doesn't matter. Yep, Hasan, just remember he's the CEO of his own company. Yeah. I mean, look, I am the CEO of my own company. I'm not. But listen, if I get murked, it's going to be a fucking psychopath, neo-Nazi.
One of your problems, Destiny, easy, was calling inflation global inflation. We don't share the same currency. Each currency is different globally. I understand why, dude. That's because you listen to a lot of retards that think that inflation just has to do with the Fed printing money and it's just more dollars. And if the Fed and more dollars is inflation because it's the Fed and inflation. I got it, buddy.
Very likely. Or like a Destiny fan. All right.
Based.
And I'm going to get murked because of the things I speak on that many of you agree with.
People are suffering. People don't feel the benefits as tangibly. This is why Trump won. You should revalue this perspective because the rest of the country doesn't share it. That's fine. I understand. I agree that they don't share it, but you're not suffering. You just think you are. And sometimes that's all that matters. I mean, like, if you want to go down whatever fucking road we're going to go down because you think you're suffering, eventually you'll truly suffer. And then you'll really know what it means like to suffer. And suffering is not complaining about the cost of groceries when you spend, $150 a month on DoorDash and Uber Eats. Suffering is not, I can't afford rent when you have to split with 2 or 3 roommates to live in, a 10-minute drive from a downtown major fucking area. Like, you don't know if you're an American, you just don't know what it means. I remember the complaints about this during the Iraq War, that Americans didn't know what I think it was the Iraq War, when the one complaint that a lot of older people had was that Americans don't know what it feels like to be at war because it was so detached from us and on TV and sensationalized and like media. And even to some extent, I think Vietnam, Americans didn't really know until people started coming back injured. And then that was when people were like, wait a second, what's going on here? Why are a lot of our boys coming back fucked up? What's going on? But yeah, we're super mega detached from everything. But hey, I mean, whatever. All the imagined pains and sufferings of the Republican Party aside, what do you think is actually wrong with America right now, if anything? I mean, I think things we can do better to like move forward and improve. I think there are things that would be nice to improve, but we can't even think about improving those things. We're like not even close to being in a spot where we can even have those conversations because we think everything is falling apart, right? How can you build a higher building if you think that the foundations are rotted? Like, I don't know what to...
It is what it is. If it happens, it happens. Nothing I can do about it. Having said that, okay, I'm not in here to fucking defend the honor and protection of CEOs. I'm not saying that at all.
Should the U.S. have higher standards? I'm a student in Europe and I don't know anyone who has roommates. Is that true? I don't know many European college people, I guess. But I've always heard that, and I know this from living in hotels and being in a lot of European apartments, generally European living spaces are much smaller, much smaller than American living spaces. But I don't know what country you're from or what country you're in, so... Is the debt not a problem? Maybe a little bit. I think we should probably try to balance the budget and probably start chipping away at it a little bit. But debt is not bad. Debt is not a bad thing intrinsically. Hold on. You know what? Maybe we'll do this. Do you understand why debt can be good? I can explain this if we need. I don't know if people truly understand this or not. Here you go. Okay. All right. We should have debt. It's good. It's good to have debt. It allows you to pay for things now that you wouldn't normally be allowed to pay for. No. No, kind of, but no. That's a poor person. No, I shouldn't even say poor person. That is good because of leverage. That's why. And leverage is important, okay? Because if you're growing, you want to grow even more. That's the whole point of debt, is to be able to leverage things, ideally. Hold on one sec. Ooh. Okay. Literally almost every other non-Western country endlessly repeats the line, "The West has fallen," almost with glee. I have an Indian friend who says it all the time. It's so annoying. Yeah, but then people in the West say it as well. So it's like so cringe. Can you explain the leverage? Well, most people said they understood why that is good, so fine of odd. Look at me explain it in the past. I think I spit on you. Do you have any color combos like blue and white? I don't know. I'll look for new shit. The thing is, in Miami, I can't really wear many different types of clothes because it's fucking hot. There is no layering here. That's why we need to move to New York.
London is the shithole of Europe right now. It is one of the worst places you can be in Europe.
Nice. But isn't not being in debt better, though? No. I know why U.S. debt is good, but why is it bad? Are we actually going to have too much? Then other countries stop doing business with us? No. Or maybe. It depends. That is good for the same reason why it's bad, which is leverage. It amplifies gains and it amplifies losses. Does that say read YouTube chat? No. Do you think living spaces are similar in size in urban centers in the U.S. like New York City, where people also live in apartments? New York City might be one of the smallest, but I don't know. Is there a way we can check? What is like the average square footage of like a New York apartment versus like a London apartment? The problem is New York is a big city, and London is like your average apartment sizes, like way out in Queens or whatever, or the Bronx or Brooklyn, are probably is going to be a lot different than like in Manhattan, right? Why do people talk about that debt as a bad thing, and why not go into more debt? Because most people, consumers, don't utilize debt. A second one to ask people to understand leverage. Consumers don't utilize debt as a form of leverage. They utilize debt to buy things that they can't afford right now, but they want right now. It's a different thing. Isn't the question of whether or not the United States should take on debt dependent on whether or not we are able to allocate capital in a manner that generates excess free cash flows? If we are unable to do so, leveraging that capital is pointless and destructive. Cool. The bad part about debt is you rely on other countries buying it to fill your deficit the past 2 years. Can't you just sell debt to ordinary citizens, assuming there's money in the economy? I mean, if your economy is crashing, obviously, or if you're... When I speak about debt also, I'm speaking from an American perspective. We have a very strong economy. We've got a big export market. We have the ability to... Like, the debt of the United States is backed up by the United States economy, right?
How do you assess the national debt?
Destiny, if you say debt is good, then why don't you have debt? Because I'm just better than you, and I'm built different. Hold on. Okay, sorry. I don't have debt because I'm currently not that great at my business, okay? What does this guy say?
How do you assess the national debt?
We mostly try very hard not to comment on fiscal policy and instruct Congress on how to do their job when actually they have oversight over us.
But is the national debt a danger to the economy, in your view?
In the long run, the U.S. is on an unsustainable fiscal path. The U.S. federal government's on an unsustainable fiscal path, and that just means that the debt is growing faster than the economy.
I have the sense this worries you very much.
Over the long run, of course it does. We're borrowing from future generations. It's time for us to get back to putting a priority on fiscal sustainability, and sooner is better than later.
what he's saying is true, but it's a little retarded. I don't know what any of these guys look like.
The U.S. is...
Is this Powell? I don't fuck. I should know what he looks like. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Does he normally wear glasses or? Is he wearing glasses in the Casey-tron meme? He wears glasses at the FOMC events. Okay. Okay. Just a quick, what, is this the same Canute clip? Are we gonna link this over and over and over again?
I wouldn't walk around the parts of Paris myself by night. No, when I was Paris, name me a major city that has gone up and hasn't gone down all over the world, dude. So there's multiple places with way lower crime rates in the Middle East, for example. There's a lot of places, smaller places. For a normal person, Stockholm isn't dangerous at all. No, but for a normal person, London isn't dangerous. Paris isn't dangerous. Austin isn't dangerous.
Yeah? Wait, I don't understand what he's saying, right? Or...
with way lower crime rates in the Middle East, for example. There's a lot of places, smaller places. For a normal person, Stockholm isn't dangerous at all. No, but for a normal person, London isn't dangerous. Paris isn't dangerous. Austin isn't dangerous.
Okay, I don't know why I was like this. Okay. All right. Okay, real quick. All right. Okay, just as a quick thing, okay? So we can understand just some business stuff, all right? Okay. I don't remember mechanical advantages because I fuck school, all right? Actually, I don't remember any of the things, pulleys or whatever, levers or whatever bullshit. If you have like there's names for all these parts and I don't know any of them, so get fucking mad, get mad, get mad, get mad, okay? I can apply a downward force on, what is this contraption called? What is this called? Is this called a lever or a lever arm? It's called a lever, right? This is a lever. Okay, that's good because we're going to use it to get leverage. Okay, so far, we're on the right path. That's good. I don't remember why. I'm sure there's a physics explanation. We said here, we thought about it. But I know that if I apply downward force on this, I can move much greater weights over here. I can move much greater weights over here than the weight that, or than the force that I'm applying down here, right? I wonder why. There must be a reason. Or no, wait, I'm sorry, the other way around. My bad. Hold on. I did these arrows backwards. If I apply a downward force here, you can move something up here. Isn't there some fucking quote? Am I making this up? Like, show me a long enough lever arm and I can move the world. Am I making this up? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Oh, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. From Archimedes. Okay, he was a smart dude. Okay, so I think the idea is leverage allows us to, we take a smaller force. I'm going to do newtons because I think that's what we measured physics in. I don't know. And then you move a bigger force. Okay, this is leverage. All right. Leverage just means that we can take a smaller thing and we can use it to move a bigger thing. Okay, that's what leverage is. All right. Okay. Let's assume. All right. Let's assume something. All right. Let's assume I know. All right. Let's assume that I have, okay, let's make some assumptions. All right. I have $1,000. All right. Holy fuck. I have $1,000. All right. Now let's assume that I'm looking at some houses. All right. Or some things I can buy. All right. I can buy a thing for $1,000. Or I can buy a thing for $10,000. Or rather, these are things that are available on the market. All right. let's say that I look at these two things and I'm like, okay, these things are going to go up by 10%. Okay. They just are. I tend to know that they are. I just know. I know. It's a safe bet. All right. I know these things are going up by 10%. Okay. So I know that 1 year later, okay, in 1 year, this will be worth $1,100. And this will be worth $11,000. I know this. I know it because we know it because it's going to go up by 10%. Okay. When I come into the market, okay, well, here, let's think of some other things that might be competing for our money, okay? Let's also say that if I put my money into a savings account, let's say that, we'll say these are investments. Oh my God, there's some NBA guy watching me who wants to kill himself, and I'm glad, okay? We'll just call this a savings account, okay? That's the only thing we can put our money in ever in the economy, all right? We'll say that savings accounts pay 1% interest, okay? So if we buy $1,000 in our savings account, we put $1,000 in our savings account, we know that we will have $1,010, okay, at the end of the year, all right? Okay. All right. Are we following us so far? Okay. So we have we'll say that there's three things available for our money. Okay. We have a $1,000 investment and a $10,000 investment that both appreciate at 10% per year. And we have a $1,000 investment that will appreciate at 1% per year. Okay. So when we're looking at where to put our money, okay, so we can't afford this $10,000 thing. Obviously, we only have $1,000, so we could put our $1,000 into this investment that will go up by 10%, or we could put our $1,000 into this investment that will go up by 1%. So it's pretty obvious we want to put our money in here, right? Oftentimes we say, don't put your money in a savings account because you're losing money. When people say that you're losing money, what they mean is that if you put $1,000 in a savings account, well, after 1 year, you'll have $1,010. But if you would have put it in this 10% return account, you'd have $1,100. So by putting your $1,000 in the savings account, the difference between these two end results is about $90. So you would call that your opportunity cost, right? You've lost $90 essentially because you could have put that money into a more profitable domain, but instead you put it here. So the opportunity cost of this investment was $90. We'll say again, right? Okay. Right? Basic. You understand this? This is okay, right? We got this so far? Pretty easy? Okay. Now let's say that there's a guy in the market. Wait, hold on. Okay. Let's say that there's a guy in the market who comes in and he says, hey, I will lend you, I can lend you money. At an interest rate. Okay, so I could lend you $9,000. I can lend you $9,000. Okay, holy fuck, I drew that poorly. I can lend you $9,000, but I'll call this a loan. But I'm gonna charge you 4% interest to do it. Okay, after 1 year. Okay, well, okay. If we were to borrow $9,000 and then we were to pay it back at the end of a year, our interest would be 4% of 9,000 is 9 and 9 is 18, 18 and 18 is 36. So it would be $360 of interest that we would have to pay on this $9,000 loan, right? So, okay. So we could borrow the $9,000. We could pay money on the loan, but yeah, I mean, if we want, we have this money available to us, right? Okay, so let's think about what can we do with our money? Well, what do we want to do? Okay, well, we see that we can borrow this money here, this $9,000, okay, and we see that he's loaning it at 4%. But if we borrow this $9,000 at 4%, we have access to this investment here that's going to appreciate the same way that this investment here will appreciate. We know that these are going to appreciate at the exact same rate, okay? Well, if I can make $10,000, or if I can basically invest in a thing for $10,000 or a thing here for $1,000, but I know both are going up at 10%, why wouldn't I borrow money here at an interest rate that's less than the appreciation of this asset here to make more money? This is what leverage is. So leverage is I go to the loan guy and I say, okay, well, let me borrow that $9,000, okay? So now I'm going to take my $10,000 and I'm going to buy this. And after 1 year, I'm going to have $11,000, okay? So let's compare the positions of both of these people after 1 year. So if a guy puts in $1,000 to this investment and it goes up, well, after 1 year, he's going to have $1,100, right? Fuck. But if he borrows the $9,000 here and he invests that borrowed money into this here, well, then what he's going to have is his initial is $10,000, and then he goes to, his money will appreciate to $11,000, and then he'll have to pay off the interest for this loan, which is $360, right? $640, right? Which is so his ending, I guess, amount of money will be and then minus the $9,000 he has to give back. Right? Did I fuck any of this up? Wait, hold on. I wrote something wrong. Wait. No. No, I didn't. I'm crazy. I'm going crazy. Okay, 1,620. Okay. So minus the interest that he pays back on this loan, minus the $9,000 principal that he pays back on this loan. So he's left with $1,640. So because this guy over here has $1,640 at the end, and this guy over here made $1,100 at the end, right? Because this guy used leverage. He borrowed some money to invest in a thing, right? He's made an additional $540, making the exact same investment that this guy did because he borrowed money to make the same investment, right? Okay. Did that make sense? This is just this is super basic. There's a whole bunch of people who will type in retarded, like, what about blah, 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 but this makes sense, right? So far, right? Oh wait, this is 560, I'm sorry. Wait, no. Chat is making me doubt myself. No, yeah, we're right. Fuck you. Okay. 1,640 minus 1,000. Okay, $540. Okay. Okay. Now, something to keep in mind is leverage. Okay. Leverage amplifies wins, but leverage also amplifies losses. So I won't run through all the math again, but if something bad happens and this investment here depreciates or loses value to $900, well, now this guy has lost $100. If this investment here goes from $10,000 down 10% to $9,000, now this guy is down a lot more. Now he's in big trouble because he would start with 10K. This would go down to 9K. He would have to sell this whole thing to pay back his whole loan. So he would not only be down his initial $1,000, he'd also be under because he'd have to pay back interest on that loan still, right? So, okay. So leverage helps you take a little bit of money and make a lot of money, or a little bit of money and lose a lot of money, basically, if that makes sense. The point I legit don't understand is why you don't go infinite like the US seems to be doing. I mean, you've got to find a counterparty, but assuming there is always a counterparty, you should go infinite, right? So somebody says, why not just infinitely leverage, right? Okay, well, we can talk about that because somebody earlier asked, hey, Destiny, why don't you have debt? Okay. Let's see how much I can butcher this. Okay. When you're sitting on money and you're looking at investment opportunities, I'm going to butcher this, and then we're going to go to the Investopedia and read the actual term because I'm going to fuck it up. We're looking for investment opportunities that represent a positive net present value, meaning I believe that if we give up this money now, then in the future, these things represent higher risk-adjusted cash flows or risk-adjusted like ultimate rate of return than just sitting on this money here now. We're looking for good NPV plus investments. These investments are not infinite, right? So if you were to give me, like, let's say some guy comes up to me and he's like, oh, hey, I'll give you $10 million to expand your business. Well, I would look at my business and I would go, I don't think I have any good investment opportunities for my business because I don't think I do. I don't know if there's a thing I can just throw money at and like, oh my God, look, the Destiny business is growing, right? So this is why I don't have debt at the moment, because I just don't have anything to leverage it with. Like, what would I even invest in? Like, if somebody were to come and offer me a big loan for my business, I don't have any opportunities to invest it in. When all of your investments are really bad or the market is slow and there's not much to do, this is another reason why you'll see companies engage in like paying dividends or doing stock buybacks, because there's no profitable things to invest the money into. So you return the money to investors and then they make money because you don't want to throw this money at a project where you're just going to lose money rather than returning it to shareholders or, returning it to shareholders via dividends or stock buybacks, yeah. If you don't need debt, why do some wealthy borrow at low rates and just service the debt? It seems like they get to be liquid and invest well because they're well collateralized. Well, those people that do that, I think they're buying like depreciating assets. So does studio equipment count as capital? Yeah, but I can just pay for that outright. That's not a good answer, because what somebody should say is, but Destiny, if you're going to make money on that equipment, wouldn't it make more sense for you to borrow $50,000 at a low interest rate and then invest that $50,000 into a broad fund and then get an interest return on that while paying off the loan? That's true, but it's a small enough amount of money to me that I don't care. So it's not, I don't want to give a fuck. But if I was like if I was poorer, that sounds mean. If I didn't have as much capital, then I would borrow maybe to fund the studio, because I know that I can make money with the studio equipment more than I could just sitting on the money doing nothing, and more than the interest I'll pay on the loan. Yeah. The reason why, when people say rich people use debt differently than poor people or whatever, that's kind of true and kind of not true. What it really means is that when a wealthy person puts money into something, it's usually to expand some type of revenue or some type of like business venture. Generally, when we use debt as consumers, what we're capitalizing on, what we're gaining, is actually utility, which is not the same as money, right? So if I borrow money to get a TV earlier, then what I'm actually gaining is I'm valuing the utility of having that TV now more than I'm valuing having the cash now and the interest that I'll pay in the future, which isn't necessarily bad or wrong. It's just not an investment. Or it is an investment, but it's not a money-to-money investment. I'm investing in like my happiness or some hedonistic pleasure or some whatever. Like, it's just a thing that I would enjoy, if that makes sense. But when you, when you buy things as a consumer and you take on consumer debt, you're not usually doing that to expand future revenue opportunities or expand cash flow or whatever, yeah. If that makes sense. I heard on TikTok that you can get debt for a fake LLC and then just claim bankruptcy and it's literally free money. Thoughts? Sounds retarded. If you think you're hearing something that's a very clever workaround of the law that's not illegal, chances are it's retarded and somebody will laugh at you when you try to do it. There's very few things in finance where it's just like, oh, I went to the bank and I said this and I made infinite money. Usually it's retarded and they'll just laugh at you and say, no, you can't do this. Obviously stupid. Yeah. But I mean, there are some illegal things you can do depending on how much you want to lie to the IRS or lie to people that you're paying money to. So. Would the media company be something that you would need debt for if it was growing faster than you had money to supply it with? Yeah, let's say hypothetically, let's say that I put one person in that studio downstairs and we had a really good model, and this guy was like fucking like a million videos or a million views every month or some bullshit, some crazy thing, right? And I'm like, oh shit, I can duplicate this exact same model across like 10 different apartments. That might be something where it's like, fuck, I need capital. I don't have the money to fund all this. And if I borrow the money, I'll make more money on the expansion of my business than I ever would just like growing slowly or something, basically, right? Yeah. Is Jerome Powell wrong that U.S. debt is growing faster than the economy? So in the long run, the current situation is unsustainable. So anybody that's a Federal Reserve chairman is, I would assume, 1 trillion times more knowledgeable than me when it comes to macroecon, because their job is literally macroecon. So when Jerome Powell says that, what I'm doing is I'm trying to interpret, not contradict. So when Jerome Powell says that the debt is growing faster than the economy, the issue is bad debt for the U.S. would be debt that the U.S. is taking on that we're not using to grow the economy. So for instance, if the U.S. took on a ton of debt and then set the money on fire, that would be bad debt. We'd be taking on a lot of debt and our GDP would not be growing to match the debt that we're taking on. That would be bad. Which is why it's probably better at least to think of debt as a percentage of GDP, although I don't know why we do percentage of GDP instead of percentage of assets. Or maybe there's a reason. But we should look at debt as a percentage of GDP rather than just like an absolute number or whatever. Is this the max? So you can see that even, is this when we started doing that? Do we really leave the gold standard that recently? I don't remember. Fuck. So right now our debt as a percentage of GDP is higher than it ever has been, assuming or excluding like the COVID place here. So if you look at something like this, I believe the assumption would be, I think the safe assumption would be that your debt, your growth of your debt is outpacing the growth of your economy. My guess would be macroecon is very hard, okay? So everything I say here, I'm on very shaky ground. My bet would be that you would, I don't know what the ideal number of this is, but this cannot grow indefinitely. You don't want this to grow indefinitely. You probably want this to hone in on some number. I don't know what that number should be or ideally should be, but yeah. The debt isn't inherently good or bad. It's necessarily, it's what they use the money to invest in. Basically, yeah. People will say that, like, actually, I might have said this before, that like debt from a government is different than like a consumer or a business. That's not actually true. Everybody has access to the same types of debt. And we can all use debt for the same reasons. Companies could just buy shit that's fun. Actually, no, that's not true because corporations have fiduciary responsibility. They can't just waste money on fun shit. But like consumers have access to debt that they can leverage. But governments should be using debt. In my opinion, I believe governments should be using debt like a business, basically, which is one of the annoying things about Trump saying that he was going to run the government like a business because he didn't do that. But yeah. Is deficit spending the idea that you're spending for things today with tomorrow's dollars? So deficit spending, okay, so here's some things, okay? Nobody knows these things. It's very frustrating, and nobody talks about these things. Okay, we have different deficits and debts and whatever we talk about, okay? So the national debt, okay, this is money that the Treasury has outstanding owed to it. Let me check, make sure. National debt. I believe is money owed to the U.S. Treasury. Is the total national debt owed by the federal government of the United States to Treasury security holders. Okay, yeah, all right. So debt is like the total amount of money that the United States federal government owes to everybody, okay? Or to Treasury security holders, right? So if you buy a Treasury bond, good job, you have part of the debt, okay? Deficit, okay? A budget, the deficit of the budget is the difference in the spending versus the revenue of the federal government, okay? Every good company probably has some kind of deficit spend because they're borrowing money to accelerate growth, right? That's why everybody, like for Amazon and Twitter and all these companies that they were growing early on, they deficit spent. They were always negative. People always like, they're not even making a profit. They're not even making a profit. Why are they even making a profit? Oh, they're making a profit. Well, it's because they're trying to grow, right? Amazon is borrowing money, borrowing money, spending money. Of course, they're trying to grow because they want to get a larger customer base. They want to invest in profitable ventures because remember, with leverage, the larger you are at the end, you make way more money than if you were to grow slowly and just make little money, right? Spend money, make a lot of money, as opposed to don't spend money, make little money, right? So if the United States 1 year has $1 million in spend, but only has $900,000 in revenue, that means that the debt must increase by $100,000, right? So if the deficit, so if the budget, meaning we spend $1 million, but we only take in $900,000 in tax receipts, then the federal government has to borrow $100,000, which goes to the debt, right? So this is a budget deficit, and then a budget surplus. I think a surplus necessarily goes towards paying off the debt, right? I think. And then you have another thing that's wholly and completely and totally not related at all, but sometimes people bring it up, and it's just called the trade deficit. Trade deficit is just the difference in exports and imports for a given market. So if I say I have a trade deficit of $100 billion with China, it means that I sell them $400 billion worth of stuff and I buy $500 billion worth of stuff. It doesn't mean we're just sending them money. It doesn't mean that we're losing to them. It doesn't mean that we're adding that to the debt somehow. It's just the difference in purchases and sales between another country. But okay. Treasury bonds are on a fixed schedule. You can't pay it off early if I recall. Okay, maybe it just means, well, at the very least, it means you borrow less, or you, I guess, in the next, yeah. Can you explain how stocks are not capital liquid? I don't know what that capital liquid, I don't know if that's a term that I'm just not familiar with. I mean, stocks, liquidity of a given asset is usually determined by how easily you can exchange it for a predictable cash value. So if you go, for instance, to the S&P 500, I would say that these types of investments, anything that's on like a big index like this, is highly liquid, because that means that, let's say I have 100 shares of NVIDIA, okay? I could probably take my 100 shares and I could sell them almost immediately, like within a minute, for about the stated value, right? So that's a highly liquid investment. And then you have things called cash equivalent things, which are just basically always assumed, like a treasury bond would be a cash equivalent because you can just trade it for the printed value of it because it's the same as cash basically, or cash as a cash equivalent, right? Can you explain what the debt ceiling is and when it should/can be raised? So the United States government, some governments are like this, some aren't. I don't know what determines if it is or isn't, or I guess it's just in your legislation. So in the United States, the government is only allowed to borrow up to a certain amount. They're only allowed to have so much debt, and that's called the debt ceiling. And every time we approach the debt ceiling, Congress has to pass legislation to increase the amount of money that the United States federal government can borrow. Why do rich countries like Germany, for example, have low debt compared to the US? Shouldn't every country try to leverage debt as much as possible? Okay, again, macroecon, very, 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 lots of stuff. One challenge of the Eurozone is because so many people, I don't even know. I don't know what I was about to say. I was about to make some crazy shit up. Well, no, because in the Eurozone, everybody uses the same central bank, right? So I don't even know how that works. If you want to borrow money, and like say you're Greece and you want to borrow money, you have to go to the same central bank as Germany or France or anybody else that uses the euro, right? It has nothing to do with the Eurozone. Isn't that what it was called? I'm sorry, I always fuck this up. What is the euro market called? What's it called when people have to use the euro? There's a name for this. It might not be the Eurozone. It is the Eurozone? Oh, well then fuck you. Yeah, but so currency is complicated in the European Union because contrary to what a lot of people think, having a strong currency isn't always good. Having a weak currency isn't always bad. Sometimes you want to do things with your currency, or you want to borrow more money or pay off more whatever debt, because it can do different things with your economy. But in the Eurozone, if one economy is doing really well and they don't mind having a strong currency, but another economy is doing not as well and they want to have a weaker currency because they want to be able to sell, export more things, right? Because the weaker currency is, the more lucrative your export market is to other countries. You're a little bit held hostage in the European Union by what all the other countries are doing. I don't know how they work this out. I don't know how they do monetary policy in the Eurozone. My understanding is it's a bit contentious, but I don't know enough to truly say, yeah. You might have been thinking of Schengen, which is the border. No, the Schengen area is for free travel. But there's a name. Not everybody in the European Union is part of the euro, for instance. The really good macroecon question is why the eurozone is bad for Europe, but the dollar is good for the U.S., even though the U.S. has also very different economies within it. Because I think the European Union. Welcome to the bullshit zone, where I speculate on macroecon without any kind of formal education whatsoever. So don't take anything I say, okay, at face value and repeat it to your macroecon teacher at the end of debate, okay, because you'll probably destroy you, okay? So my guess is going to be because what the Eurozone tries to do, oh, that's it. It's called the EEA, the European Economic Area. Those are people of the Euro. So I believe that the issue is that the European Union essentially tries to emulate the structure of the U.S. federal government. But the U.S. federal government is the federal government of the United States of America, and all 50 states are part of the same country. So the federal government can dictate laws and do exchanges of dollars, like we can do distributions or redistributions from one state to another. The federal government has a lot of leverage, has a lot of control over like how it receives federal income and how that federal income is distributed to the states. For the European Union, even if they might use a similar central bank, there is no European Union government that has a budget where it receives money from all of the different countries and then distributes it in the same way that the U.S. federal government does, in a much stronger way in the U.S., I believe. Wasting my time and years on something Destiny doesn't know. Hope you all enjoy your stay. Hey, Srafric Reaper, if you want to hop in and explain anything, knock yourself out, buddy. Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. The EU does. Yeah. So everybody in chat right now that's typing, well, actually, there is money that goes. It's not even remotely the same as the United States federal government. It's not even remotely the same thing. Does money go to a central European Union government? Kind of, sure. Is there like a European Council? Sure. Can they bail out states in terms of like sending money to them or whatever? Kind of, sure. Not even remotely the same way and with the same level of integration that the United States federal government does. But is there an effective difference between taking debt and increasing the money supply? For example, is borrowing X dollars the same as printing X dollars? Honest to God, I don't know. That gets into weirder areas. Like I couldn't tell you. So increasing the amount of supply of dollars available is called, I think that's a relatively newish policy, and that's called quantitative easing. But I wouldn't be able to coherently tell you the difference between this versus just selling debt. I don't think I would be able to tell you the difference because can't you loan? Isn't loaning how money is created? But individuals can't create money that way, right? Like I just don't know the answer. God, fuck, we should just take a macroecon course. So like, for instance, I think our retail or some of our banks practice something. It's called fractional reserve banking, where basically the idea is I can lend you $1,000 while only having 10% in those assets in my bank to say that I've lent you that $1,000. But I think I could theoretically Theoretically, I could do that as an individual, no? Like I could tell a friend like, oh yeah, I'll lend you this money. And then, but I really only have 10% of those assets. Well, no, because at the end of the day, he does have to actually spend that money. So where does the actual money that he spends comes from? Unless he's spending that all on credit, which goes back to my credit. I'm not sure. There's a difference here, but I don't know. Actually, you know what? I guess printing money devaluates everyone's money, but it is cheaper to do for the government than debt, but it fucks the economy with inflation. Everything in economics is a trade-off of pros and cons. There is never a thing that is strictly good. There is never a thing that is strictly bad. Anybody that tells you that printing money is bad is a retard. There's a reason why basically no major economy in the world uses a gold standard or some fixed currency with no central banking mechanisms to manipulate their currency. Nobody does it. If it was such an amazing idea, unless you believe the Jews or the fucking the satanic ritual people run the whole fucking world, then you just simply ask them that. Why does nobody in the world use a gold standard? It's so fucking good for your economy. It's fucking stupid. One minute and 45 seconds. There's no way that this is The Economist. I remember watching these fucking guys. Okay, 11-minute video. Fuck it.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Go to skl.sh/theplainbagel5 to get a free 2-month premium trial. Quantitative easing is something we've seen pop up around the world.
Theoretically, would a gold standard be good if you could guarantee that countries act in good faith within the global economy? No, because there are times when you want a weaker currency. There are times you want to be able to manipulate your currency. There are times where inflation is preferable to a stable dollar where other cuts have to be made. Consumers aren't always rational. Citizens aren't always rational. Sometimes it's better to inflate than it is to chase weird deflationary spirals or to just have an economy that's like running out of control when a little bit of inflation would just make everybody function a lot easier, a lot better.
Month premium. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Go to skl.sh/theplainbagel5 to get a free 2-month premium trial. Quantitative easing is something we've seen pop up around the world ever since the 2008 financial crisis. The US, UK, Eurozone, and Japan are just some of the countries that have implemented the unconventional monetary policy as a way of helping their economies recover from the recession. But what exactly is quantitative easing? Well, the short of it is that it involves printing money.
What techniques do you use to make your hair look so messy? So I take a shower, and then after I take a shower, I take a comb, and I comb my whole hair, and then I take a towel, and then once I do that, I go like... It's a very intricate process.
Which is thought to encourage business activity. But it's a little more complicated than just creating dollar bills and tossing them from a helicopter to cheering crowds and businesses below. The central bank will use the newly created money that it produces to purchase assets from the market. And while this isn't different from what the institution actually typically does, it's the scale and the type of assets involved that makes quantitative easing so unconventional and, quite frankly, controversial. So let's go through how quantitative easing works and what it means for the economy on today's Plain Bagel. A country's central bank, like the Federal Reserve in the US and the Bank of Canada in Canada, is the steward of the country's currency. They are intended to be an...
Destiny, an economist said that even though they don't use the gold standard, every currency starts and ends in gold, even Bitcoin. Is that true? No, who said that? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Bank of Canada in Canada is the steward of the country's currency. They are intended to be an independent institution from the government. And among their responsibilities is the task of actually issuing money and managing its supply, while simultaneously helping the economy maximize employment and stabilize prices. So when a country starts to show signs of a slowing economy, the central bank will typically step in to try and boost business activity through expansionary monetary policy, which involves influencing the country's currency to encourage more spending and lending. One way they do this is by changing their policy interest rates, which you hear about in the news quite a bit, especially within the last decade. By lowering interest rates they pay on their deposits that they receive from other banks.
Wait, They mean to say that every currency is going to end up being pegged to some real life asset, I guess. Oh, I mean, that might be true, I guess. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're hoping that a currency represents a value of something, some unit of work or some commodity or asset or whatever. That's true. Sorry. So whoever said that gold thing, I might actually agree with that economist, the guy who just phrased it in chat. I just phrased it simplistically. So that might be true.
Central bank applies downward pressure to other interest rates within the economy.
Just keep in mind, sometimes people will say statements a priori that they assume are just valid and smart, but they're actually stupid. People say things like, oh, a paper currency? That's just paper. It's not worth anything. It's not real like gold is. Excuse me, what the fuck is gold worth? Gold is worth nothing either. You understand that, right? It's fucking worthless. We use it as something electronics or for some other things or whatever. It's just a limited thing. It's just it's a thing of scarcity that if you want, you can trade it. But there's no reason why gold is intrinsically or inherently valuable. That's also a human assignment of like, oh, well, it's scarce, so we can get assigned to some level of value. But like in an apocalypse, you don't necessarily want gold. You might want like bullets or healthcare supplies or water filtration more than fucking gold, right?
Within the last decade. By lowering interest rates they pay on their deposits that they receive from other banks, the central bank applies downward pressure to other interest rates within the economy. From interest rates paid on government bonds and corporate debts to car loans and mortgages that you or I might take out. The idea is that a lower cost of borrowing will encourage spending, which is a fair assumption. If you were going to buy a house, for example, you might be more inclined to make a current purchase if you could borrow at a lower interest rate. Whereas if interest rates were higher, you might decide to hold off and, at the very least, increase the down payment you make before making the purchase so that you don't have to borrow as much and pay the expensive interest rate that you're going to be charged. Low interest rates have prevailed in most developed countries since the 2008 financial crisis. But as you would expect, interest rates can only go down so far. In the US and Canada, the central bank interest rates are in the low single-digit range. And in the Eurozone and several other countries around the world, rates are actually in the low negative range.
Keep in mind, this is an older video, 4 years old, but.
And so with little to no leverage left in that department, many central banks have implemented or considered expanding quantitative easing programs, first started a decade ago, as a way to continue stimulating their economies. Quantitative easing, or QE as it's commonly referred, is the process by which the central bank injects money into the economy. But while it's often imagined as a central bank printing dollar bills and giving them to banks and corporations, it's not that simple. Firstly, the move is actually mostly digital, with the central bank simply crediting themselves electronic funds, and the money enters the economy through open market operations. That is, the central bank inserts itself into the market as a buyer.
Wait, somebody said, Destiny, Germany has less debt because German economists have a tradition of being in favor of strict fiscal discipline. Basically, they think ideally the budget should always be balanced. After the financial crisis in 2008, we actually put that into the constitution, and now our ability to take on debt is limited to an issue in politics because right now, Germany is last place in projected growth in the OECD for the next year, and more progressive parties push for loosening the constitutional restrictions. Yeah. Keep in mind that everything I say is from a U.S. perspective, and our ability to take on debt and ensure the integrity of our currency might be a lot different than other countries. So there might be some unique aspects to how the United States is allowed to utilize debt. But yeah, so I can't speak to other countries. I'm mainly speaking from a U.S. perspective here.
Market operations. That is, the central bank inserts itself into the market as a buyer and purchases securities and assets using its new money, typically buying government bills and bonds from other banks. This action increases an economy's money supply. By buying the assets, the central bank is replacing them with new money, as if pulling the funds from an alternate dimension and injecting them into the economy. The process also leads to the central bank increasing or expanding its balance sheet, since it will end up holding financial assets. So, why does
the German government is literally spending more than ever? How is taking on more debt to waste it on social programs going to help the economy? Because typically when you create happier, healthier, and more secure citizens, those citizens go on to become more productive members of society. You might not realize this because all of your investment came from mommy and daddy early on, so you don't have to think about what it means to have somebody investing in your well-being and your success. But all of those icky, disgusting brown criminals that you complain about in the streets, if they were in other areas where they were allowed to be more economically prosperous because basic social welfare needs are being met, are going to contribute more to your tax base rather than just being a drain on all your social services. Fucking retard.
This is the central balance sheet, since it will end up holding financial assets. So, why does the central bank consider doing this? What's the benefit of buying financial assets from the market? Well, one of the main objectives of QE is to lower the costs of borrowing, i.e. they're looking to ease a country's financial markets. This is done during periods where financial markets are tight, or when banks are more reluctant to lend, like after the financial crisis when the credibility of many businesses and organizations became less certain. Now, when overnight rates are near 0% from the central bank's influence, banks already borrow at a cheap cost, but the rates they turn around and charge on other longer-term loans may still be high. So by increasing money held by the banks, which is sitting around not earning a very high return, the hope is that the banks will be more willing to lend out to businesses and consumers. And since there's more banks with more money to lend, they will ideally compete and lower interest rates, making it easier for market participants to borrow and spend, thus theoretically saving the economy. This is why higher money supply is thought to lead to lower interest rates. Money becomes easier to come across, so it costs less to borrow. QE can also decrease interest rates by lowering the yields on financial assets. As a quick refresher, yield is the income return an investor receives when they purchase an investment. It's interest or dividend payments divided by the price paid, the market price. By buying financial assets like treasury bills, the central bank increases its price by bidding it up, thereby lowering its yield with interest rates remaining constant.
It seems COVID has ruined these assumptions, but the Japanese government shows it's sustainable without doomsday. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if the Japanese economy is facing like imminent doomsday or not. I don't know.
This has a number of effects. For one, it can make it easier for the government to borrow money moving forward. For example, imagine the government has issued $1,000 treasury bills that pay $20 annually, so a 2% annual interest rate.
Okay, I don't know why we fucking turn this video on. I can't do this right now. My brain is not in fucking macroecon mode. You know what? I'm gonna throw this here. Do I have macro? Oh, macroecon course. You know what? Boom. We'll do this. I'm putting it on the list of things. The list of things. The great list of things.
America versus Russia, asking men if they would provide for their woman.
Well, it just depends, you know. Number one, why would I? But what is she doing while I'm working? You know, it's kind of like each relationship now is a 50-50.
То, наверное, да. Вот, потому что все-таки я беру ответственность за человека.
She has to.
Definitely not propaganda. Definitely not.
Fight for herself. She's an adult.
Конечно, если жена, это семья, это дети, и, конечно, в идеале, чтобы она уделяла 100% времени воспитанию.
Well, I mean, I would want it to be 50-50. That's the current situation I have.
Если ей не хочется работать, если ей не хочется самореализовываться, ей приятно.
Aren't you far enough into your political career to know how a central bank works? Are you seriously using YouTube to educate yourself? Hayek is the most based man. So number one, I don't know if anybody knows how central banking works, Federal Reserve included. Number two, the president of the United States sure as fuck doesn't know how the central banking works. The president-elect Donald Trump has no fucking idea. Number three, none of the political commentators that you listen to as well have any fucking idea what central banking is. Okay, so I would be shocked if you could show me a single popular political commentator that can explain to you like what's the difference between like quantitative easing and just lowering the bond yield or whatever. No fucking shot, so fuck off. What is the point of these stupid fucking videos? Do you want an economy that looks like Russia? Is that what the goal is? This should be the question. Instead of all these bullshit questions, say, oh, hey, just curious, whose economy would you rather resemble? The Russian economy? Which is basically an autocratic shithole with a ton of oil, or the US economy, which is the leader of the free world across several domains. Like, what? Stupid. Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, wait, hold on. For all this fucking talk of family and everything, the Russian birth rate isn't even higher than the US birth rate. Like, what? Come on, Jesus. Oh, more cops. Why are there so many goddamn cops here? Oh my God. What's going on right now in fucking Miami Beach? Holy shit. The last like week. Have you heard the proposals of EU federalism? Any thoughts on them? That's a hard one. I don't know. I don't know if you could ever do it now. I think Europeans consider themselves to be, well, not even consider. The Europeans just have such distinct histories. Like, you couldn't do like a federalized version of Europe without people feeling incredibly ass-pained. The only people that believe in like a cohesive European identity are American Nazis. So I don't know. Yeah. Germany's balanced budget amendment, also referred to as the debt brake, is a fiscal rule enacted in 2009 by the first Merkel cabinet. The law, which is in Article 109, Paragraph 3, Article 115 of the Basic Law, Germany's constitution, is designed to restrict structural budget deficits at the federal level and limit the issuance of government debt. The rule restricts annual structural deficits of 0.35% of GDP. Damn. In light of what you've been saying about government debt, do you think austerity is a really, really bad policy or maybe an okay policy? Austerity is fucking retarded, but also spending a ton of money is fucking retarded. Okay? Notice how earlier when I was drawing up the what should we invest in, right? And we're considering like what are our good NPV plus opportunities. When you're thinking about not issuing debt. When you're thinking about taking out debt or spending money or doing whatever with your budget, you're thinking about like, well, are there good things to invest in right now? Are there good things to spend our money on right now or not? If there's not, then you should probably tighten up your budget. If there are, then you should probably spend more. People that obsess over just cutting spending or raising spending is stupid. It's not a good thing to cut your spending. It's not a good thing to balance your budget. And it's not a good thing to overspend on your budget. And it's not a bad thing to balance your budget. It's not a bad, like none of these things are inherently good or bad. You just have to be responsive to the situations around you. Again, if you were to talk to any successful business person and then show them your store and your profit margins are, you're making a ton of money, you got a lot of revenue, and you have zero debt, like the first thing they would tell you is, what the fuck are you doing? Like, go borrow some money and expand. Why would you not do that? Noah Smith, it is time for austerity. Sure, I imagine in this article, though, Noah Smith is going to make an argument that we should be spending less right now, which is fine if there are less things that, like, it would be, like, there's a reason why servicing the debt has become too expensive, or there aren't good investment opportunities that are matching, like, the level of debt we're taking versus, like, the growth of the economy. These are good ways to view it. But just austerity for austerity's sake or deficit spending for deficit spending's sake is stupid. What do you think about the upcoming insolvency of the Social Security Trust Fund? I don't think the Social Security Trust Fund could ever become insolvent. I think that's a meme. I think at worst, it would just start paying out like 75% or would pay out less or something. I feel like I read about this like a couple months ago, but I don't remember. I'd have to go check it out.